Vroom, vroom. Well, Chris, we was looking on the internet and they've actually, some blokes put in the one, what we made years ago with Black Bess and going on the rally.
That was such a superb drive in that car, we didn't go far. I mean, we just went out around the roads around here, but it was such a lovely car and such a history.
Yeah, 1912.
You gave me a copy of the book, the Black Bess book.
Yeah.
And so with Ivy Cummings, driving up a hill climb.
Now, this is the heart of Black Bess, a 5-litre, 4-cylinder engine. That's over a litre per cylinder. The biggest 4-cylinder on the market today is Porsche's 2.5-litre unit, so you can just imagine how big the pistons must be. And I think it's a far more attractive piece of machinery to look at than today's computer-controlled, catalysed devices. This is real torque. Not to mention 100 brake horsepower delivered at a leisurely 2,400 RPM. Highly efficient for those days. So, Ivan, how do I start this beauty?
Retard ignition, couple of pumps on the handle.
What, then it locks in position?
Locks in position.
Yeah.
Press the starter. And advance the ignition when it starts.
Then it's into first, ease off the handbrake, thankfully a lot more effective than the foot-operated transmission brake, and off on one of the most deeply satisfying drives I've ever taken.
I mean, consider it was made in 1912.
Yeah.
I mean, it was easy to
Well,
drive.
you said to me, this is the supercar of 1912.
Exactly, and it was so good. I mean, the gearbox was brilliant.
That's right. Well, even I could drive it.
I'm telling you, I don't know what Bentley was thinking about if Bugatti managed to do that in 1912, but there we are.
But you let me loose in one of your Bugatti 35s and working out the gearbox on that.
Back to front.
You were very good. You sat alongside me. You didn't wince too much.
Well, they do take some punishment, I'll tell you. Yeah. But so that was all really good, and when it came up on the internet, I was really shocked,
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll give old Chris a ring, because obviously you don't live far. So I thought it'd be quite good to make a video for shed racing.
No problem.
So so there we are. So I mean, when we did that video was about the time when I was thinking about making a new Type 35.
Well, you in a way, you had done things like that. You let me drive Bilco. Do you remember Bilco?
That was a special.
Well, that was a Bitzer, wasn't it?
Yeah,
you built it up.
It's just changed hands and going to America.
What, that car?
That car. So we had a lot. Well, we went on the rally with that, didn't we?
Well, you did, yes. But I mean, that was a car you created.
Just a load of bits.
So you obviously knew how to build new Bugattis.
Oh, we could build a new one, no trouble. But what happened was, I was talking about it one day to a mate of mine who's involved in property in London, and he was, and I said, I'd like to make some back axles, So he said, well, how much is that going to cost? And I told him, and he gave me the money. So we set about making 10 back axles. Well, the casting in the middle was, you could get them, but they weren't particularly good. So I had new patterns made, exactly as original, really lovely with a torque arm bracket and that. And,
well, you always admired Bugatti's engineering skill, didn't you?
Absolutely.
You always thought it was very beautifully done.
Oh, yeah. He managed to do things the simplest way, but the best way. The back axle's a dream. It's so cleverly located. But anyway, so we had the axles made, and there was a bloke called Jeff Harris who's still doing it. And he was machining the bits in Slough Trading Estate. And Mr. Conway walked in, and he saw all his axle casings, and he went, oh, what's going on, my boy? Because that's how he talked. And Jeff told him it was me. So next thing you know, he came to my premises in Greenford, came upstairs in the office and said, right, what's going on? So I said, this man's giving me the money to make these axles. I said, because I keep getting asked for them. Oh, right. I said, in fact, we have been talking about making a complete car. And he went quiet for a minute.
I bet.
And he said, well, yes, my boy, I suppose that's not a bad idea. There are a lot of parts available. And I suppose I could vet them to make sure they're done to the original specification, and the club could get a small commission for each one sold. Yeah, well, that sounds very good. He said, and of course, obviously, you'd have to prove that you've got the money available. Well, that would have been no problem, because this bloke, you know, I mean, he was very, very well off. So, so that was it. So off he went, and in the meantime, we registered a company called Grand Prix Bugatti Limited, which we've still got. I've still got the brass plaque somewhere. I think it's in the cupboard or something. So anyway, he went off to the, the committee, and because they all said, no, we don't want no replicas and all that. So we didn't do it. It was as simple as that.
Well, that was a time when there was a lot of argument about replica, wasn't there? Do you remember all those AC Cobra replicas were around?
Yeah.
And what was that company called? Teal were doing a replica Bugatti.
With a Volkswagen engine.
Yeah, that's right. And there was another. Yes, there was one with a Volkswagen engine in the back.
That's
wasn't
it.
There?
Yeah.
So I suppose they were a bit sensitive at that time.
They were sensitive.
But now everybody in the world is making.
Well, that's the
replicas.
problem, of course. You've got pure sang in Argentina. They make Alphas, Bugattis, Amel cars. I think you could have anything made there, you know.
Yeah.
And of course now it's, well, what about Bentley?
Yeah, do it. I know, that's amazing, isn't it?
Man, I forget they made.
And they've pre-sold the whole lot.
Absolutely. The 4.5 supercharged ones are all gone. There's 15 of them, and now they're making speed 6s. You know, I mean, unbelievable. But so really, I was just 40 years ahead of my time. Really, that's what it was. You know, and it all got ruined because of that. But it makes me feel really we could have been doing it. And of course, at that stage, the Bugatti name was still with Bugatti.
Yeah.
Or Messier Bugatti. They make undercarriages for aeroplanes or something, don't they? Yeah. So anyway, Mr. Conway comes and sees me again, and he said, "Oh no, boy, they're very much against it." So I said, "Oh well, that's a shame, you know. But well, we won't do it." Then he said, "Why don't you write to Bugatti and buy the name?" I mean, I couldn't believe when he said that, you know, and because it was a very good idea. So he gave us the address, and he gave us the man to write to and everything. Yeah. So we wrote to Bugatti and asked if we could buy the name. And they wrote back saying, "No, I'm afraid we can't do anything at the moment. We're already negotiating." And that's when they were negotiating with Artioli.
To set up the new Bugatti company.
The new Bugatti, the EB110.
And that's the EB, yeah. I remember driving that, the twin turbo version of it, the Super Sport, and it was so blindingly quick in those days. Yeah. And we only had one day with it, and it was absolutely bucketing down on an Italian autostrada. Yeah. And I was driving along with a cameraman beside me, saying, "Oh, I want a picture of the Speedo," showing. He said, "I'd like it on 200 clicks." Yeah. Kilometres per hour. On a bloody, water streaming across the road. Yeah. I thought,
luckily, it was four-wheel drive.
Fortunately, it was four-wheel drive. There wasn't a lot of traffic about either, but it was all a bit white-knuckle.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we made a video the other day. We went to Brands Hatch on a track day.
All right.
And I went in my little Lotus 7 thinking, "Oh, this is going to be really good." Well, of course, we got there and it was pouring with rain.
Yeah.
So it's just the same, sliding all over the place is no good, is it?
But as a former British touring car champion, you have the skills to control that.
Well, I was doing all right. I lost it once. I got it completely sideways, but I managed to sort of semi get it back. In fact, one of our followers wrote in and said, "Well held."
Yes. Yeah. I did there was a thing called the Big Boys Toys.
Yeah.
And they were Beatles, Beatles, and they did a whole series, and they invited me to run a car for the season. But I got sideways at the top of paddock. Yeah. And went down the hill, fishtailing down the hill. And I noticed out the corner of my eye the marshals running away from the marshal's post because they thought that's where I was going to end up.
Absolutely, yeah. The funniest story I know about that, we went to the Clausen and we took Julian Mazjub with his 35B. Yeah. Well, if you ever go on the internet and look at him going up Prescott, I mean, it's frightening. I mean, he really goes. I mean, it makes all the other cars look tame.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went to the Clausen and he made the fastest time of of all. All the ERAs and everything.
Yeah.
Well, when you do the Clausen, you go, and then you go across this valley, and the road's about as wide as a car. It's not very wide. And there's a drop each side, but not...
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's sort of like the top of a dam almost, isn't it?
Yeah,
I know,
and anyway, halfway across there's a sort of house, and Julian's coming, whoa, in the distance you could hear him. And all the people ran behind the house because they thought if he goes off the road, he'll go for a mile.
Go through the house, yeah.
He was flat out, I tell you. And I drove across it in... I can't remember. I did it, but I can't remember. I think it might have been Black Bess or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, going over that bumpy road was quite fierce. At sort of 80 miles an hour. Julian was doing 130 miles an hour.
I know.
Frightening. But anyway, you know, they're fabulous cars, them 35s.
You know, everybody talks about performance now and, you know, supercars and how fast they go, but they forget how quick those guys were doing. You know, I remember talking to Duncan Hamilton once.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, Le Mans, you know, in the C-types, you're going quite quick down there. And he said, well, not Le Mans. He said, we went to Morocco, we were doing 200 miles an hour. He said, but we kept getting wheel spin because the car was lifting aerodynamically and the wheels would spin and then it would touch down again. You must be out of your, you know, to keep your foot planted on the throttle when the car is lifting and the wheels are spinning. You know?
I know, old Duncan was a character. We used to buy and sell cars years ago.
He did,
and
yeah,
we used
to
call in his garage. So I'm in his garage. And he said, oh yes, I remember when I was driving something or other. He said, I put my arm out, he said, and I put my foot down and the flames off the tyres burnt my arm, you know. So, because I wasn't having this, and I went, oh, that sounds a tall story. And he went, oh, okay, my boy. And he rolled his sleeve up and he got this great burn mark on his arm. So I thought that was very funny. But, you know, if you went to see Duncan, you was always there for a couple of hours.
Yeah,
because you know,
endless stories, yes.
He was endless stories, yeah. He wrote this book, didn't he? Touch Wood.
Touch Wood, that's right.
Yeah, that's a good book. That's one of the books I've read in my life. I don't read books. No, that was good. So there we are, really. So that's it. But old Mr. Conway was definitely up for it. He was right behind me. He would have been there, and we'd have had the axles made, which we did anyway.
You're making all sorts of things for Bugattis, aren't you?
Oh, now, yeah, Timothy. Well, Timothy's took over from where I left off. Yeah. We make our own sump, our own crankcase, gearbox case, back axle case, superchargers cases.
See, there's not many people physically making things anymore.
No, well, what's happened is...
They buy in the components from, you know, but the components are made in China or, you know...
Yeah. But what's happened is, of course, that the DVLA at one stage were a bit slack. So you could build a car and you could get a letter from the Bugatti Owners Club. It would have a Bugatti Owners Club number. So it'd be BOC 50.
Yeah.
I think it's about 130 now. But anyway, so somebody who got the ump, who obviously got a real Bugatti, they wrote to the DVLA and said, you know, this is not good enough. These cars coming in from Argentina. So that's what buggered it, really. So then they went completely the other way. So you can't get anything registered.
But there was a big court case, wasn't there, with over a Bentley or something
Hubbard.
like that?
Well, I was in partnerships
what's
with
his name?
Ed Hubbard.
Hubbard, that's right.
Yeah, I know.
You were involved in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in partnerships with Hubbard, and that was the red car, of course.
Yeah.
When we built the red car, that belonged to Hubbard, and he said, I always had my cars red with black wheels. Well, because they didn't like that, and the fact that I won by miles, you know, I mean, they banned it in the end because they reckoned it was a replica, which it wasn't really. It was a special.
But it got to the High Court, didn't it?
Oh, unbelievable! I'll tell you what, I was very clever. Because when they did the thing with the solicitor, I forget the name of the firm was buying it, but anyway, they were going to buy it, and it was written on the thing, the car known as old number one.
Yes.
It didn't say old number one, chassis number, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Old car. Well, that car was known as old number one. Yeah. But what it was the bits that were left from old number one that went over the banking, you know. And of course, what happened was they did this deal and it was millions of quid.
Yes, it was, yeah.
And they'd never seen it.
Yeah.
Well, because when they saw it, they was imagining it was going to be a big green Bentley with the Union Jack on the side and the mesh on the headlamps and all the things, you know. Yeah. And it was a special.
Yeah.
It was, and old Ed Abrams had it painted red, the same as mine. So, because when they see it, they thought, oh, they had to get out of it somehow, and that's how it all finished up.
But I remember going to now what was his name, the Swiss guy who built cars, and he had a row of GT40 tubs.
All right.
On the top of his workshop, on top of the shelf, and then he was working on one down below, and I said, oh, that, you know, yellow one. I said, oh, that, you know, that's nice. And he said, that's the Rodriguez car. I said, what, the Sebring car? And he said, yeah, that's right. I said, that burned to a cinder. He said, yeah. This is the Rodriguez car. You know? Well, I seem to remember seeing pictures of it with 4 black sort of pools of rubber and a pile of cinders.
Yeah.
Still had a chassis number.
Yeah. Well, they dig up Spitfires, don't they?
Absolutely.
Get the chassis plate and build a Spitfire.
So what's to stop you building one now?
What, a Bugatti? Well, we've done it several times.
Yeah.
You know, Tim's done it a couple of times. About once every 18 months, we have someone walk in and say, well, I'll have a new one. And he builds them a new one. In fact, we had a fabulous customer called Al Smith. He was a really lovely old boy. And he'd been a lorry driver, but very successful. And he had
he would have been very successful.
He had hundreds of lorries and I think 14 depots and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, he sold out to TNT. So he had all this money, and he bought various things, you know, obviously as an investment. But anyway, he finished up on my doorstep in the end. And he said to me, I'd like to buy a Type 35, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he had 2 young sons. So he went to look at this one. He said, what do you think of that one, Ivan? I said, well, it's all right, but this has got this against it and blah, blah, blah. And that. And every car we looked at had a black mark, but it was a load of money.
Yeah.
So in the end, being a very practical man, he just said to me, I think you better make me one. He said, because at least I know what I've got.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. We made him a brand new car.
Yeah.
And the funny part was that I raced it a couple of times and his son raced it and everything. And in the end it got sold. And it got sold to a bloke who literally lives in a house where if you stand on his back door, you can see the factory in Moorsheim.
Wow.
It was so funny, and I mean, I delivered it to the bloke. He couldn't speak English. He was a very nice chap, and he said, "Oh, I remember him coming with the articulated lorry and taking all the spares away." Which Mr. Conway was one of the people that did that, and because he could remember all of that, but he didn't have any money then, I think. And then first time he got a few quid, he bought one, and it was made here. So I thought it was really funny. But that got sold recently. But on the side of it, we had all the things that it had won, you know. It had won so many, fastest time here and blah, 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 all down the side of the car. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, all the people that race now, a lot of the cars are not pure.
Well, a lot of the cars in the, the Bugatti Museum over the years have been chopped about and changed, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And of course, the rumour now is that all the people that race Ferraris and AC Cobras, they've got a real car, but that ain't the car they race.
Yeah.
You know, the car they race is in the shed, and the one they race is a new one, but you can't tell the difference, you know?
I said to one of the drivers one day, I was supposed to be interviewing for, and I said, of course, the car you're driving is worth £1 million. You know, do you think about that as you go around Paddock Bend? And he said, I can drive into the banking at 150 miles an hour in this car, and it will still be rebuilt. He said, it won't rebuild me, but they'll rebuild the car.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, this is the thing. You know, if you've got the smallest bit of a car that's, you know, it's got a bit of an identity, then that's what they do.
Yeah.
But, you know, now Ferraris, like a short wheelbase, is £8 million. So, you know, running around in it. And you can have one built for £1 million.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think if you had the real one, £1 million is not going to mean a lot to you. So you have another one, don't you?
1972, I used to drive to the autocar offices through the back of Pimlico, and there was a 250 Lusso, hand-painted in Dulux
I think that's
emulsion.
actually quite a famous car.
And I used to leave notes on the windscreens. Do you want to sell it, you know?
Yeah.
But,
well, same, there was a Lotus Elite sitting in the curb somewhere in London.
I used to have a Lotus Elite.
And so Daddy-O, I think that was Daddy-O, or one of those.
Oh,
it was
right,
a really
that's the Les Leston car.
Yeah, it was a really famous car. And it was like flat tyres. It was sitting in the road so long.
Somebody phoned me up and said, did you own 3004 AT? And I said, yeah, that's my old Lotus Elite. He said, his name, and I'm fiberglass specialist down in Chichester.
Yeah.
He said, we've got your car and rebuilt it. I said, oh, really? He said, it looks really nice. Do you want to come down and have a look? So I drove down, and it looked fabulous. You know, it's all beautifully done, and Barani wheel.
Yeah.
And he said, do you want to take it for a drive? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. I fired it up, and it's with that Coventry Climax vibration period. And I drove it about 10 miles. I thought, I know why I got rid of this bloody car. And I'm actually very glad I did.
But didn't they feel fabulous in the day?
They were stunningly good.
First one.
That dashboard layout was the best in the business. It's never been beaten.
Yeah. The first one I ever drove was when I worked at the London Sports Car Centre, and it was a Jimmy Clark car.
Oh, right, okay.
And it was green and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I drove it, and it was all right, you know. And anyway, Ian Scott Watson happened to come into the showroom one day, and I think he come to see the car, you know. He said, oh, that's Jimmy's old car. And I mean, although I was only a mechanic, I was, you know, I used to talk to everybody. And Alan Foster was the best governor in the world, you know. I mean, he would never tell you off. He was like, you know. And anyway, so I said to him, I can't believe it. I said, you know, I took the rocker box off to do the, you know, the valve clearances. And he said, it's only got a 3-bearing cam carrier. I said, and it hasn't got a close ratio gearbox. No. I said, you know, and you used to win in it. He said, oh, yeah. He said, Jimmy said, all that silly close ratio stuff. He said, I like a nice low gear, get off the line. Once I'm in top, that's it, like, you know. And the car was a bloody standard Lotus Elite. It was, you know, you expected it was going to be stage 5 or something, and it wasn't. So it was obviously Jimmy was good.
But they were, those engines were designed to run a fire pump at a constant RPM.
Exactly.
And certainly I only drove 2 or 3 of them, but they all had a vibration period around about 4,500 revs, and you just could not get rid of it.
Well, we would have a damper now, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But, I mean, they were amazing cars. And the other thing that happened was they used to sell them as kits.
Yes.
And old
there was no purchase tax if you bought a kit. But they weren't allowed to supply it with a manual of how to build it.
Oh, I didn't know
because if you had a manual with it, then the customs excise wanted their money back. But what they did was they gave you a booklet that said, in the event of a serious accident, this is how the front suspension goes back together.
It sounds like Colin Chapman, doesn't it? You know, good stuff. Well, really, I've got a funny story there. So I'm working at London Sports Car Centre, and my boy was Bob Jewett. He was a lovely young bloke, he was. And anyway, so Alan Foster buys the first ever Lotus Elan.
Right, yeah.
As a kit.
Yeah.
Well, because he is London Sports Car Centre, he is professional. You couldn't sort of take it to London Sports Car Centre and put it together. You could have done, but Alan Foster was absolutely convinced that the customers and excise man would be following it in a van, like, you know.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, he sent it down to Frinton-on-Sea, where his mum had a lovely bungalow, and we put it together down there. So me and old Bob go down in the works minivan, and we spent 3 days putting this car together because we weren't rushing, and it was so nice, Frinton-on-Sea. But it had obviously been together, you know, when we were working on it, there were bits of dirt here and there.
Yeah.
So it had obviously been taken to pieces and made into a kit. Well, because that was number 1, Lotus Elan. I mean, worth a fortune now.
Yeah.
And anyway, I can remember driving up the front at Frinton-on-Sea. I can't remember what it was like, but I remember sliding it through a few corners. And even then, the wheels was touching on the body.
Yes.
So that was, like...
Well, the classic with, not with that, but with the 7 kit, was that you put the front wishbones on upside down.
Oh,
because
right.
they actually fitted.
Yeah.
And you bolt it all together, and then something was slightly wrong with the wheels. When you drove the car, it didn't feel right at all, and it took you about a week to work out that you actually, completely screwed the whole thing up because there were no instructions to show you how to do it.
Yeah. No, they were good old days, weren't they, really? I mean, I went years and years and years ago, I'm working at London Sports Car Centre again, and there was this bloke called John Ogier, and he'd earned his fortune out of broiler chickens or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was into Aston Martins, and he had 2 mechanics work for him, but they were Aston Martin mechanics. And anyway, he bought this Lotus 23, and Jimmy Clark was going to drive it at the 1,000-kilometre race at Nürburgring.
Yeah.
So John Ogier gets on the phone to Alan Foster, because they were mates, and he said, have you got anybody who knows anything about Lotus? He said, oh yeah, Ivan's pretty good on them, we'll send him over. So I get in my 1936 Austin 10, and I drive to the Lotus factory, and I'm thinking, oh God, I'm going to be with the kiddies now, I don't know, I can manage it. So I was a little bit concerned. So anyway, I arrive at the factory, and there's this Lotus 23, and it was the first time that the Ford twin-cam engine had ever been seen by the public.
All right.
And I remember helping them to take it off the dyno, and it hadn't actually given 100 brake horsepower. It was 98 or something like that. It was real early days. So anyway, so we get the thing, and we start putting the kit together, and I'm with the Aston Martin mechanics, who are really good mechanics, but not working on Lotuses. And it was dead funny. So we go and put the engine in, and in the back of the car, there's a sort of couple of tubes like that. And we put the engine in it, and it wouldn't fit. So the mechanics, they sort of stood back and went, oh, like it's all over. It'll have to go to the drawing office, and it'll have to do this, and it'll have to do that. So anyway, so we're standing looking at it, and the Lotus man who worked at Lotus, who I think was quite a famous mechanic, but I can't remember his name. Anyway, he went off and got hold of a man from Cosworth, because he worked at Lotus. And he came up and he went, oh, heat the tubes up red hot and just dent them in a bit. And I mean, the Aston Martin mechanics were totally and utterly thought, wow, what's this, Anyway, so we did that, got the engine in. And then, because it had a brace that bolted over the top of the axle, over the top of the engine. And of course, it was only used for having a single rocker box. So again, that was wrong. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, we just chop it up and alter it, so there's no drawing office, just do it.
Well, it used to be said, if you couldn't fix it with baler twine and a club hammer and duct tape, it wasn't worth fixing.
Well, Colin Chapman's thing was, if it costs money, it's too dear, and if you can weigh it, it's too heavy.
Too heavy, yeah.
But anyway, so they put me on the job of doing the throttle, gear linkage, because there was nothing, it was just a... So I said to the bloke, what do I do? He said, come with me. So off we go, and we're walking through the factory, and we went into this thing, and there was a pile of gear linkages, and every special, everything they'd ever made, when they took the gear linkage off, they threw it on this pile. So he said, there you are. So I said, oh, right. So I sorted out a bit of thing, and I want a universal joint, and I sorted it all out. But the Lotus Elan wasn't out. And there was a Lotus Elan there with a cover over it and boxes on it, so you couldn't see the shape. So anyway, obviously I was going in and out of this room on my own, so I thought, well, I've got to have a look, hadn't I? So anyway, I walked over, lifted the cover up and looked at the first ever Lotus Elan, which, as it happened, got taken to pieces, and it wasn't the one that I built for Alan Foster. But anyway, the bloke come in, he said, you shouldn't be looking at that. Well, of course, now you'd have a mobile phone, wouldn't you? And you'd have 50 pictures of it. But anyway, that was funny. Anyway, I did the throttle linkage, and it all worked lovely. And so they go off to the Nürburgring. So they said to me, do you want to come to the Nürburgring? So I said, oh, what do you get paid? They said, oh, you don't get paid. I said, oh, I don't think I'll go, I mean, I knew Jimmy Clark was, but I knew I was a better driver than him anyway, So, I mean, I should have been driving the car, really. But anyway, I didn't go. And it was the biggest mistake, really, because they all set off, apparently, and they all came round. And 20 seconds before anybody appeared, this little Lotus went, and no one took any notice of it. They obviously thought he'd come out the pits or something.
But But he built up that much lead.
20 seconds in, and then all the Ferrari 250s and all going, and Jimmy was miles in the lead. But apparently what happened was the exhaust broke. Now, I didn't do the exhaust, I did the gear link. And it overcome with fumes, and he had to stop when he went off the road, I think, but, you know. Yeah. But he was 20 seconds in the lead.
He used to, when I used to go down to Brands Hatch, and he drove the Lotus Cortina in the touring cars. And the mechanics used to paint a white patch on the offside front wheel tyre. Because from the coming down Clearway onto the bottom bend, he'd lift the front wheel up and it would just slowly rotate. Right the way round the whole of bottom bend with one wheel in the air.
Famous pictures, there's loads of it, the wheel's that far off the ground.
Just fantastic.
But it's a bit like driving a Bugatti. Yeah, look at that. I didn't do this. This is not pre-looked at. But there's a picture of me getting a record at Prescott. Look how far off the ground the front wheel is.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a Lotus Cortina.
You should have painted a white spot on.
I didn't know that story. That was before my time.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing how things have changed, though, isn't it? Really, with this internet, everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Yeah, and they pick you up on it as well. You know.
I mean, you can't bullshit now.
Somebody posted a picture of the coal depot at the back of King's Cross. And I foolishly said, oh, that's where the Harrier landed for the London to New York race, and it put coal dust all over half of London, you know. And I immediately got a barrage of people saying, no, it wasn't. It was a P1127, and it was a London-Paris race, not the London. You know, oh, Christ, you can't say anything without somebody researching it and picking you up.
No, you've got to be very, very careful what you say nowadays.
But you're I mean, from sort of racing cars and everything else, you're nailing minis together down there.
Well, it just so happened that I bought an original Mini, a beautiful car, and, you know, needed a little bit doing, but nothing much. So we tidied it up. And then we got this man in the Bugatti club, and he rings me from time to time. He's a great originality man. And he rang me up, and he speaks very posh. I mean, he really is a posh. Oh, hello, Ivan, you know, real lovely bloke. I mean, I'll get on with it. He said, I know you've got an old Mini, he said, and he said, would you buy another one? I said, well, I would, but it's got to be a 59. He said, oh, yes. He said, I'm sure this is a 59. So anyway, I said, yeah, I'll buy her. Anyway, I put the phone down. I think 3 months went by, and some bloke rang me up. He said, my lady friend's got this 59 Mini and she wants to sell it, would you? I said, yeah, no. So that was it. So I said, yeah, tell me where you want me to be and I'll be there. Put the phone down. Another 3 months, or, you know, it might have been 6 months. It went on for a year, I think. Yeah, I'll be there. But anyway, in the end, after about a year, the lady who actually owned it rang me up. And she said, I learned to drive in it, my brother learned to drive in it. It was my dad's car. It's in a barn, but they're now going to turn the barn into a house, so I've got to do something. So I said, right. So anyway, I went and met her. And it was a good car. It was a very good car, but she'd spoken to the 59 register or something, and they told her it was worth £20,000 or something. And I said, well, I think it would be worth £20,000, but, you know, it's got quite a little bit of rust, etc. Anyway, in the end, I gave her 12,000 quid for it, which was plenty of money. But I thought, well, now I've got 2, and I said, the other one is a Morris, and this is an Austin. So that one was made up the road, and the Austin was made in Longbridge. So we got the Morris Mini Minor, and we've got the Austin 7.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've had it for I must have had it for 3 or 4 years, and it's always sat round the corner. And I'm always saying to John, we must do that someday. And it suddenly occurred to me that it would be quite good to build a Mini and put all the stuff on it that they did in the 60s, because as I said on my previous videos, every Mini that ever came in part exchange at the London Sports Car Centre was modified.
Yeah.
It was lowered, it had twin carbs, you know, you didn't see the original one.
No.
So I thought, well, this would be a good excuse to rebuild this car and put all the mods on it and make videos on shed racing. So we start making the videos, And of course, next thing you know, all the people watching racing right and going, oh yes, I remember the extensions on the switches and the thing for lowering the
SPQR gear change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we haven't got one of them yet. But anyway, so all this stuff, they're telling me, and I already knew some of it, but. Yeah. So next thing you know, bloke said, I've got those extensions, and he bought them and gave them to me.
Yeah.
Another bloke bought me the chrome bit to lower the steering column. Another bloke's given us a 3-branch manifold. So this car is bristling with all the stuff,
It used to drop the steering column down, as you say, with the extender. And then, of course, the steering wheel was too close, so you then bought seat extenders from Paddy Hopkirk.
Exactly.
And they moved the seat back about 3 inches, so you couldn't actually put anybody in the back seat then.
No.
Your car was your seat was up against the back.
It's up there, yeah. No, that's it. But so there's all this stuff is appearing, and it's getting better and better and better. Yeah. Got the Speedwell alloy wheels.
Yeah.
My
Mini Cooper spat back. I put trumpets on the cars because it looked good,
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of air cleaners, and when it spat back, it then set fire to the insulation behind the dash panel.
Yeah, oh, you
so
were
it
posh.
sort of filled up with smoke.
Yeah, you were posh, because 59 minutes don't have that. It sets fire to the speedo. But anyway, so that was why we did it. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the exhaust, they always had it coming out the middle.
See, now you're talking about replicas and building new cars. You can buy a mini body shop from Heritage.
Oh,
can't you?
Yeah.
So could you build up a 59 car?
You could build one, I think. But I don't know whether they get it exactly right, because they didn't make many 59s. Then it's like buying the bits. When we buy the bits, very rarely do they fit. So it's like the prototype.
Yeah.
The people at Austin Rovers sold, well, I don't think they were BMC then, weren't they? They sold a prototype to the public that filled up with water.
Oh, yeah, filled up with water because the welds were wrong on the down the side of the chassis.
Didn't have holes in the gutter, so they used to do that at the first service.
Yeah.
I mean, they got away with murder. I mean, you imagine now.
First service. But when you bought a new car, at 500 miles, you went back to the garage with a list.
Oh, absolutely.
Of what was wrong with it, could they put this right and everything else. I did a tweet the other day of walking around the Emil Botner, who used to run Datsun.
All right.
Walked around his headquarters in Shoreham, and he was showing me around the offices, and we walked past this office with 2 people in it, and I said, oh, what's that? And he said, oh, that's our warranty department. So at the time, they had 2 floors of the Unipark building at Oxford. A huge office block was their warranty department.
Yeah. Now you buy a car, get 7 years warranty. I mean, if you bought a new Mini, I think you were lucky if you got a warranty. Was it the old car dealers used to say, across the curb when you drive off, that's it, the warranty's over.
12 and 12 warranty, 12 miles or 12 hours.
Apparently some wag in America, he filled the floor up with water and put a few goldfish in there, and he went to the local dealer and said, I don't think this is right. Yeah, no, they got away with murder, really. But it was quite funny, though, because the first time I ever drove a Mini, I was very friendly with a bloke called Chris Ashmore, and they were in Birmingham, and they were Jaguar agents, and his brother raced in Formula One, and he raced in Formula Juniors, and, they were a racing family. And he had to go back to Birmingham, and he had a DV24 Mark III or something, a problem thing. But he'd come down in his Mini, and it was the flat in South Harrow where Charlie Lucas lived, where it all started, Formula One.
Yeah.
So he said, my Mini's in Charlie's place. He said, can we go round, and would you come back to Birmingham with me? Because I can't drive 2 cars, obviously. So I said, yeah. So because I get in the Mini, then I'd never driven one. It was really early days. I didn't know about it on the floor. And I'm turning the key, and I'm looking around. And old Chris walked over, and he said, it's on the floor, mate. Press the button, right? So off we go now. So we're going to West Bromwich, down the M1, which was about the only motorway then. So we're going there. And this bloody car was a 59 one, and it was right round the speedo, completely round, flat on the floor, and he's going along in the old Aston cruising like. So anyway, so we got to the first services, and I'm flashing the lights like, and he pulled off. And I said to him, mate, look, mate, I said, this is going to go bang, you know, because A, I wasn't used to driving down motorways anyway, because there weren't any, and B, I'd never driven anything flat out continuously. He went, no, he said, that'd be all right. He said, I always do that. I come up and down from Birmingham regularly. He said, I never lift my foot off, he said. They reckon it's bad for them. So this Mini was completely off the clock. Anyway, so we arrive in Birmingham, and of course there's loads of roundabouts. And of course old mate is a bit of a racing driver. And of course he's going round and roundabout in this Aston with a tail out, and I'm alongside him in the Mini, because, you know, the Mini could go round and roundabouts much better than an Aston Martin. And so when he's doing all this, I'm just there going round and roundabout. So me and him had a race in the wet to the garage, you know. So...
who was it? Christabel Carlyle used to race early Minis.
Yeah.
And she said, the original steel wheels were pulling off over the studs.
They do.
When you were, you know, racing and
Funnily
really hard.
enough, I've got my original car. I decided I had to have the early wheels, and they're riveted instead of welded, the centre. And I said, no, they'll be all right, you know, I won't go silly. Anyway, I took one off the other day, and round where the studs go, you know, there's like a little dimple, isn't there?
Yeah.
The paint's actually cracked. And I thought, hang on a minute, I'm sticking my neck out here. So the other car, the man has obviously changed the wheels, because it's got a riveted wheel in the spare, but all the wheels on the car are the welded ones. And I'm going to take them off and put them on the original car. Because I thought, well, you know, I have driven it at 70 miles an hour. I mean, if the wheel come off, you would look a bit of a mug, really. So I've decided. And of course, the lady in the 59 club, we went to Prescott, and there was a meeting at Prescott, and I took my 59 car, and she said, oh, you're not allowed to go up the hill, she said, if it's got riveted wheels. So she was fully aware of it.
Yeah.
And I was aware of it, but I thought, well, it won't affect me, but I'm definitely going to take them off. So that's you know, there you are. Sitting talking, you remember proper things, don't you?
Yeah.
But we did have some fun in the old days. I mean, I can remember signing on, and I'm in the queue, and you had like a little piece of paper about that wide, and it was your doctor's certificate.
Yes.
And I'm lining up, and I said, I haven't had the medical done. And Nigel Stovey, Bradford's wife, I can't think of her name. She killed me. I can't think of her name. But anyway, she said, give it to me. And she filled it in. I mean, now you have to go for stress-induced ECG.
Have an ECG,
you know,
and all sorts
it was another world now.
Yeah.
And then it costs you a fortune. Then your helmet's out of date, and it looks like brand new. The seat belts are out of date. They look like brand new. Everything is got... the fire extinguisher's out of date. It's never been used. It looks like brand new, and you've got to get another one. So I'm beginning to find that motor racing is too dear. But anyway, I'll see how I get on, because I've got to go for the stress-induced ECG.
Yeah.
And I go every year, and I always get away with it, but, you know, I've got a lovely woman puts me on the machine. She's been doing it for 25 years, and she looks like an old woman now, older woman. But when I first went there, she was a real dolly bird. And I think, this is nice having this girl, right? And now she just looks like me, old.
I must have been working for Autocar, and the editor of Commercial Motor came in, and he said, I don't know whether to take this advert or not, but this guy reckons he can turn you from a car driver into an Arctic lorry driver in 5 working days. And he said, we're a bit worried about taking the ad. He said, will you do the course? So well, yeah, all right. So signed on with this bloke. We were driving around in this big Arctic, and at the end of 5 days, he'd pre-booked a test, and so, in Aldershot.
All right.
So I went into Aldershot, a 40-foot trailer, you know, sort of trying not to run the grannies over on the corners of the curb and everything. And we came up to this junction, and I said, do you want me to go left or right? He said, with respect, it's not necessary for me to tell you. I thought, I've missed something. So I went right, and he said, we passed a sign 20 feet back saying no right turn for vehicles over. I thought, you bastard. He said, I've had to intervene, so that's the end of the test and you failed. So I thought, fine, okay. I went back and looked, and it was a rusty old sign. It was obviously on his route, you know, and I thought, you rat bag.
Yeah.
Anyway, I passed it the next time, but so they took the ad in the commercial motor.
Yeah. Well, old John's got an Arctic licence. And he had the bloke teaching him, and I'll tell you, old John's brilliant. I mean, you want to see him backing a trailer up, you know. I mean, I don't do it now, I just let John do it. But anyway, so John's being taught to do it, and the bloke is saying, oh, look, he says, you missed that curve by this much, and blah, blah, blah. And old John got the ump in here, and this is the bloke teaching him.
Yeah.
He said, well, if you reckon you can do better, I'd like to see it, like. And he said he couldn't do it any better than me, but he had to sort of fault him all the time, because he knew that the bloke, when he went for the test, would. Anyway, old John's got a proper Arctic lorry licence.
Yeah.
He's never used it.
No.
And well, we had an Arctic at one stage when we used to take the Bugattis about, and John drove it.
Well, I saw a picture the other day of you squeezing a Bugatti into the back of a white van. And
Absolutely.
There seemed to be about an inch to spare on either side.
Exactly. You know, Susie has bought a Bugatti. I mean, she's got a collection of, well, her dad was in the trade, and he was mad about Ferraris, and he's got Alzheimer's, so Susie now looks after the cars. And she's got loads of Ferraris, but they've never had a Bugatti. So anyway, Susie found this one at auction up in Yorkshire, so we went up and had a look at it, and it's a really good car. I mean, it's got matching numbers, and the only thing wrong with it is it had a new body. But the body originally was a saloon, but years ago. So anyway, so it's had 3 bodies, and anyway, she's bought it. We went and got it in the van that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what we did was we cut the back of the van out a little bit to miss the hubcaps and the wings. So you take the rear lights out, and it goes in. And my Hall and Scott goes in, and it's really, really good. And because you can drive a look at 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And you then got a trailer on the back, so that's a good thing, that. But it was an ex-police special operations vehicle. So it's
what, with the V8 in it?
No, V6.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's one with the thing that, you know, went over the front windscreen and all that.
Yeah.
And it was full of stuff. We took it all out, so it didn't cost any money to take it out. But it's automatic, and it's a V6, and it's de-restricted. Yeah. So it really goes very well. But if you look around the body, it's had a lot of kicking. There's patches every now and again, you know, where you can see it's been painted, where people have been kicking it when it's on a riot.
On a riot. Yeah.
And it's got a washer bottle, like a real serious washer bottle. So obviously when the screen was down, if somebody had put something on it, it's got a separate switch. Another bloke in the car could press the switch and it deluged the
screen.
Yeah. And then the other thing, we had to take the grill off because we put new fan belts on it. And behind the fan belt is a mesh. So if you tried to stab it, you'd have been lucky to be able to get through the mesh, you know. So anyway, we took that out. But it's amazing. They reckon they cost a load of, well, the wiring we took out.
Yeah.
Had a phone, everything. It had got seats for about 6 or 8 coppers sitting there, and bloody great air conditioning plant, which I took out. It was like for a hotel or something, I think. It was really... Yeah, but it's turned out to be a marvellous thing, and I've been down to Italy in it. Yeah. And I've been to the south of France in Italy. So that was really good. Now, shall we have a look at the car?
Really nice car, isn't it?
That number there. See, what normally happens is the starter motor goes in there.
Yeah.
And that normally gets damaged. Or it's had a bit of jiggery pokery, but that's had no jiggery.
But that's been stamped in.
That is a proper number, that, and it matches that, which is original. Ooh. So it's a matching number car. The wings are original from when it was a saloon, when it was first bought in 1927. And then it came to England to the main dealers, and they took it to Olympia to the motor show as a chassis. Lord somebody or other bought it and had a saloon body put on it, and used it until it was obviously worn out or whatever. Then it had a period of lying dormant, and the body was scrapped. So another body was put on it, but all the time they've kept the original wings. So they're the wings, and they're the headlamps, and they're the side lamps. It's in the original picture of when Lord, or whoever it was, and his wife apparently was born in Downton Abbey.
Oh, right, okay.
So she was obviously a lady of some description.
Yeah.
So
why have you taken the head off?
Well, what happened was, we went up to Yorkshire to look at it, and I took the filter off to have a look at the filter, and it had a grey mass on it, and it was quite obvious.
Mayonnaise.
It had water in the oil.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we've got to take it to bits anyway. Yeah. So that's it. But so far, the pistons are lovely, the block's lovely.
Yeah.
It wants a few things. It wants cam followers and bits and pieces. So that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to help her do it, but obviously she's VAT registered and everything.
Yeah.
So it's a proper company.
Now, it used to be a story that if you wanted to grind the valves in, the first thing you did was to take the back axle off.
Well,
before cylinder heads
I've
came
heard
off.
that story, but I'll tell you what, they're very simple cars.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to taking my modern Mini to pieces, this is a doddle.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have computers controlling it.
No, that's dead right. That's dead right, and you can't do anything with them. I mean, it's like showing me a telly. I couldn't fix a telly, but I could fix that. So that's it. So because I say to her, she said, "Oh, we'll do it," and she's bought it, and I said I'd help her, and we've been having so much fun together. You know, we've been going and we've been doing rallies in Italy and France and this like. Next thing you know, she arrives with that in her back of her car, and that was the little car that she had when she was a child.
Yeah.
So she's got a lovely garage which she got the cars in.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Looking at the little children's car there. When I was living in Cookham, I was friends with people up the road, and they had a garage with a sort of a floor above, and there was a little car up there, just like that. And I said, "Oh, that's nice," and he said, "Oh yes, grandfather made that." And grandfather was the original Mr. Morgan.
Really?
And he built it by hand. I said, that's... What?
And the Morgan Motor Company?
Yeah. Why was it stuck up there?
Yeah.
That's worth... No, that's just grandfather's car.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like that with that, because that's quite valuable.
Oh, yeah. Remember those little Austin pedal cars?
Yeah, well, that's what
they've
that
got a
is.
huge following now, haven't they?
Yeah, well, that was a saloon, or the two-seater, and that was a single-seater.
Yeah.
But I said to Susie, we ought to put a shelf in her garage and put it up on the shelf. Because on the other side, it's got Till and Pilkey, because her name's Pilkington. Yeah. So I reckon we ought to do something with that. But I mean, this is going to be a load of fun.
Yeah.
And then we'll obviously drive it and have some fun with it. And I'll teach her how to drive it, because she loves driving the cars.
Yeah. Yeah. What are they?
That's a breather.
A crankcase breather?
Yeah.
Wow.
Straight up, look.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could fill it up with oil there, but it's got one over there, so you fill it up there. Yeah. But I mean, it's a very, very good car. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be as good as this.
How many of these would he have built?
Oh, I think he made a load. Yeah. I can't remember, but he made a lot of these because they were like
that was their bread and butter.
Car. Yeah,
bread and butter car,
somebody would buy this and drive it every day. I've got a lot of memories and things driving 44s because Bilko had one of these engines. And I always say it's a sort of Bugatti that you don't have to be particularly clever because it hasn't got a roller bearing crank. It's got a plain bearing crank and it's got 9 main bearings. So that never goes wrong. And, it's got a Bugatti clutch which you've got to be a bit, look after. It needs servicing. But other than that, I mean, this is a bit like a 3-litre Bentley. If you wanted to go down to the south of France, you'd probably get there. And that's why I like them so much. I mean, I love the GP car, but really it's a racing car.
Yeah.
And people drive them on the road and they need, they need greasing and they need the clutch looking at. And,
What do you think of these, the modern, well, I say the modern, this latest generation of electric cars, and they're saying they've got 1,000 brake horsepower?
No, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, who
needs 1,000 brake horsepower?
Well, who needs it in the first place? And also, it's an electric motor that generates maximum torque from the moment it starts turning over.
Well,
so how many of those sort of super rich owners are going to be capable of driving 1,000 brake on the road?
Well, terrible. But I tell you, I've noticed that when you drive on the road now, Tesla people tend to go, huh?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They love to do that, don't they?
Yeah.
You know,
but there's
squirt of acceleration.
Well, there's a lot of one of the police forces was saying the other day that they're getting a lot of low speed, heavy traffic, minor accidents.
Yeah.
Because people are not used to all that torque straight away the moment you put your foot on the throttle, and they're hitting the bloke in front.
They certainly go, don't they? But you know, I mean.
But you're not going to become a electric car.
I mean, I wouldn't mind. I mean, I've got nothing against it. But it's just that I haven't actually got a car. I mean, the Mini.
Well, actually,
that's my car there.
I don't actually have a car.
No, I don't. Not a normal car. I mean, I've got a van that I drive. I've got my Mini.
Yeah.
But really, that is a sort of works Cooper. It's got every extra you could think of, and I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
And that's quite a funny story. I got onto Sitters, and I said to them, my Mini Cooper wheels, I said, they're a little bit chipped, I want some new ones. So the bloke said, well, and I showed him, he said, oh no, he said, you can't buy them. He said, they're Alpina wheels. And he said, unless your car was fitted with them when it was new, you can't buy them. And I've never known a Mini to be fitted with them.
No.
So I said to him, well, you better look it up. So he looked up the original sales thing.
Build sheet, yeah.
Yeah, and it had
There's
Alpina wheels. So he said, right. So I said, well, I want 4. How much are they? He said, well, the wheels are £400 each, and the bit in the centre is £100. So it's £500 a wheel.
Wow.
So I said, oh, I'll tell you what, mate. I said, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
He said, well, leave it with me, and I'll go back and see if I can do something. Anyway, I went back to him, and I bought a whole set for £700.
Oh, well, there you go.
And they were very reasonable. But you see, I wouldn't want to drive that in the winter.
What did we used to put on? Wolf Race.
Wolf Race wheels, yeah.
Remember John Wolfe?
Yeah,
He was killed in that Porsche, wasn't he? He
That's it.
bought that long-tailed Porsche.
Funnily enough, I had his works TVR.
Really?
And I raced it. Yeah, I raced it
Wow.
for years. I only sold it about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Lightweight TVR with a Climax engine.
Yeah.
No, it was a good car.
I drove the first V8, Griffith. No,
Yeah.
before that, well, very early on, when it was the old shape.
Yeah.
And when you accelerated hard, it left a long black streak from this rear wheel,
Yeah.
and then a series of black dots from the
Yeah.
other rear wheel,
Well, it was
because
tramping.
the axle was tramping up the road.
Yeah, but I mean, they had a series for them, didn't they?
Yeah,
Jerry used
racing
to do
series.
that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Anyway, so this is going to be a beautiful car.
Yeah. I mean, the body's lovely, and the other good thing
You're
is...
going to keep the body, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not been on there long, but the man who did it was the last owner, and you can see he's drawn pictures, and he's really thought about what he was doing. And the standard body is called a Grand Sport, which is, this looks like a Grand Sport, except it's a little bit shorter here, which is not a bad thing.
Is this a dicky seat?
No, that's
just a lot.
There's 4 seats.
Yeah.
That's for your luggage.
Yeah.
But it's got a driver's door, where the original Bugatti doesn't have the driver's door.
Yeah.
So that's a real nuisance, because when you want to get out of it, you either jump over the side,
Yeah.
or the passenger has to get out, and then
And
you go
you
out
get
that
out
side.
that side,
So
yeah.
that, in my opinion, is one of the best bits about the car. It looks like a Grand Sport, but it's got a door, and it's got its original wings
Yeah.
that it's had since 1927. So, you know, and all the numbers, the back axle is 16 and the gearbox is 22, and as an early car, that's about what they would be. And then the other thing, the early cars had a low, high-mounted oil pump. So the oil pump was mounted up here. So you press the start, and it took a long time for the oil to get from there to up here.
Yeah.
And then the later car, I think literally the next year, they mounted it down low. So somebody obviously in the last donkey's years has
modified it.
Modified it and put the low oil pump, so you get oil pressure instantly, you know.
You'd be petrified of driving into that casting, drilling into that casting. Though,
Well, someone did it. I actually did it on Bilco.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was a high mountain. But the funny part is underneath it's got fins, and they've normally been knocked off on curves and rocks.
Yeah.
They're not all perfect, but they're very good.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one. I think when we have it out, we'll probably repair it so that it's all good. But all the numbers are dead right. So it's a good car, really. But it was on a little auction site that really does furniture and clocks. Susie saw it on the internet, on a social media, one of my family's cars coming up for sale, and then she looked it up. And Susie's dad, I mean, 'cause obviously she was with him when she was young, and she remembers all the things he said. And he went, "Oh, no one will come up north to look at a car. You've got to take it down south." He said, and so, because Susie said, no one's going to go up to Yorkshire to look at it. And no one did. We were the only ones. So she was bidding, and there was a man actually there was bidding. Yeah. So I think we were the only two that actually looked at the car.
Yeah.
But it wasn't cheap, but it is a dear, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was worth it, isn't it?
I think so.
It's a lovely car.
It's a lovely car. We'll have a lot of fun with it, and it'll get sold eventually.
Yeah. Well, you're just sort of, these sort of cars, you're just a custodian as it works its way through.
Yeah. And of course, it's nice when you know all the custodians, isn't it? She's got the Lord and Lady, she's got this one, that one, and she's got a box of history with photographs of it when it was new and everything. So that all came very nice.
Yeah, lovely.
But it was dead funny when we were at the auction, and in amongst the stuff was a Ferrari toilet seat. Now, you can't believe what it's right. So it's made of plastic. You know the bit that closes down? It's made of plastic, and it's got models of Ferrari underneath the plastic between the thing.
Yeah.
So then you lift that up, and you've got the seat, and that's plastic and you can see through, and it's got models racing around the seat. So anyway, we didn't buy it, obviously, but obviously Susie having Ferraris is quite funny, so we were laughing. So anyway, she bought the car, and she said to the bloke, "What happened with the seat?" So he said, "Oh, it didn't sell." She said, "Oh, could I buy it?"
Yeah.
Anyway, she bought it just for a laugh. Because she's got in her garage, she's got a toilet. And I said, "Oh, you've got to put it in your Ferrari." And then when the people come and look at the cars or whatever, you've got to say, "Now listen, you've got to go to the loo." I said, "Well, I don't really want to go." "No, I insist you go to the loo." Because, I mean, you can't help but laugh. It's such a funny thing. I don't know whether she's got it with us. If she has, I'll get her to get it out. It's so funny. And
I see there's an Elvis over there.
Yeah.
Have you still got your racer?
No, I was disgusted with that because old Jerry jumped in it first time out and comes second at Goodwood behind a Jaguar. And then, unfortunately, being an idiot, I let somebody do a track test with it, and I told everybody what I'd done. Well, it's a 1952 car, and you're raced against 59 cars. You've got to do quite a lot to it to make it other than just go in it and drive around because you want to be at Goodwood. I wanted to win.
Yeah.
So anyway, I really went to town on this car.
I remember.
And then there was all stories about it being shrunken in size and all that. That's a load of cobblers, that. But I did make a very good job of it. So anyway, in the end, when they said, "Oh, you never get invited back to Goodwood," at them times, I used to like to go to Goodwood. Now I think it's a bit too much, you know? There's too many people or whatever. So anyway, while I was building that car, I bought loads of scrap Elvises so that I could see the best bits on a 67 one or whatever. And I built a racer. So I finished up with a field full of, Elvises in rusty and everything. So I rang up a bloke called Chris Prince who breaks up Elvises and sells the bits and what have you. And he said, "I've just bought a Grey Lady convertible. And it's been sat in the garage for years and years and years. I think it only had 2 owners, but the man had took the wings off and it looked pretty desperate. And I had a deal with him for all my scrap ones for that.
I'm right.
And then 20 years ago, I rebuilt it.
Yeah.
And we cured all the rust, around the edges of the wings. We had a new hood put on it, new interior. And then I thought, well...
And the Ferrari doesn't drip oil
onto
your nice roof?
It does, but it drips a bit further forward. And anyway, so that was it. And then I decided, well, as it's I'm going to really use it, I had a later one, a 1967 one, which has got 120 horsepower instead of 90, and it's got a flat filter. The early cars didn't have a filter. So we put the TE engine in it, and then it had a 5-speed ZF gearbox, so we put that in it.
Wow, yeah.
And then the back axle is an automatic ratio, which is the highest ratio, and I put disc brakes on it from the earlier car, later
as
car.
As you do.
And it all just went straight on.
Yeah.
They didn't. Yeah. That chassis is exactly the same as the one on the later car.
Yeah.
All they did was make a bit more tiddly-poo body.
But they're now suddenly making quite good money, those things, aren't they? What's that car? A Red Triangle.
Yeah, they've gone to town. And I'll tell you what, it will cruise at 80 miles an hour, no trouble at all. But you have to have... Me and Mary went down to the south of France in it, and we're overtaking all the cars and everything. And I kept stopping for petrol. I said, I don't think we can afford this, Mary. We'll have to go along like normal people, you know. So we're driving at a sensible speed. But if you really drive it will go to 100 miles an hour.
Excuse me, I followed you back from a French car day or something at the Ace Cafe about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm living up the road, and you were coming back here, and you were in the Alvis. And I can't even remember what I was in, but I was working fairly hard around the North Circular to stay with the bloody thing around
that goes beautifully. No, that's a good car, that. But, you know, then I buy a Ferrari.
As you do.
And then I've got into Sampsons because my dad was into Sampsons. We built this. Me and John made the body and everything. I bought a chassis, a matching number car with, you know, and we built a trials car for me and Susie to go trialling in. And I've had a lot of fun in this. It's got a 4 pushrod engine.
Oh, right, okay.
How do you open 8 valves with 4 pushrods? So, and it's really clever. What it does... those springs there overcome the inlet valve spring.
Okay.
So what it does is it opens the exhaust valve mechanically.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for the inlet valve to open, it drops off the cam.
The exhaust closes.
The exhaust closes, it drops off the cam, and those springs there overcome the valve spring and open the valve. I mean, you wouldn't think that would work, would you? There's no oil up there. You have to
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and it pulls 4,000 revs. Now, how can it pull 4,000 revs when you can push the valve in and out? So it just shows you how light the spring can be just to return the valve.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of fun, this. We've had a...
And the push rods are external.
Yes.
They just...
That's it.
So the cam runs along there.
Yeah, it's normal. And then they made an 8 push rod one, and they reckon it don't go as good. But I don't know. But old Susie's, you know, I mean, the trouble is with me, if I had someone my age, they'd be struggling to get in the car, you know what I mean? So old Susie jumps in, and she's like my carer, you know, she looks after me.
Good.
Good. Job done?
Well, good to see you, old boy.
Lovely to see you again.
Years,
Yeah.
you know?